Thank you, Mayor Gale, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. I am very proud to be talking about the Green City Plan 2028. A lot of effort has gone into this document. This plan will look to achieve environmental protection for and with our community out to 2028. The history of this plan sits with the Sustainability Action Plans dating back to 2011. These plans were largely brought around to ensure that we showed transparent expenditure on the Environment Levy and that we planned our works in advance. In 2018, the Council put a lot of effort, as many of you may be aware, into the Community Strategic Plan. In the same year, the Sustainability Action Plan was due for updating, and so we thought this was a fantastic opportunity to ensure that our planning systems were combined. The Community Strategic Plan, known as Our Future Willoughby, sets out the community's long-term vision and priorities for the future of Willoughby. There was extensive consultation and community engagement conducted for the development of that plan. And it came up with 5 outcomes. The first outcome, in no priority, was a city that is green. And we can see the community priorities that came out of this outcome around green spaces, sustainable lifestyles and practices, in enhancing our natural areas, and reducing energy, water and waste, and reducing carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. So as the community was clearly identifying priorities for environmental management, we decided to use these as the structure for our next environmental plan, rather than using the old Sustainability Action Plans. This not only assured the process was driven by the community, but it would assure alignment with Council's delivery plan, its operational plan, and its corporate performance measures. Our Green City Plan. In response to the community's request for a city that is green, we developed this plan. To produce our Green City Plan, we undertook further detailed engagement. So we moved a step further into those community priorities, and we collated a lot of comments and feedback from the community. And we had a consultant engaged at the same time, and that consultant's role was to review that community feedback, and we tried to keep that at an arm's length from the staff. They undertook benchmarking study on the sustainability targets of the 40 councils in Australia, and they delivered a comprehensive supporting technical document to determine evidence-based targets for energy, waste, transport, bushland, and water use and quality. So you can see up there it's broken into 2 documents. The first document, and I do have some copies here, although I encourage you to find it online. The first document is a light document. It's here for you to get a good understanding of the targets, our progress to date, and how we're going to get there. The second document, to ensure transparency, we've put all the information into this second document. This is over 100 pages. It's not available in paper, but it's certainly available on request. This is a supporting document that contains the details. It has the supporting evidence, the action plans, the carbon footprint for council and the community, recommended targets based on community feedback and the evidence, and a plan for council to engage with the community to help realise these targets. It was important to us as we were setting up this plan to ensure that we aligned with state, national and global initiatives. On a state level, the plan's targets complement the New South Wales Climate Change Policy Framework. Federally, our actions will contribute towards Australia's response to the Paris Agreement. And in addition to this, the plan also supports a number of UN sustainable goals. So the very first community priority I will address is reduce council greenhouse gas emissions. I'm addressing this first essentially because this was really the strongest message that came out of our community consultation program. The targets that were set here were that by 2020 we will emit at least 20% less greenhouse gas emissions from our operations compared with 2008-09. By 2028 we'll emit 50% less. And by 2050, we will achieve net zero. Now, I'll sometimes talk about going back to 08-09. That's simply because that's when we started collecting the quality carbon data that we can rely on. And we're lucky we have that history of data in order to undertake our work. Also, it's important, we'll see the targets as we go through this document. The targets, they're evidence-based, they're strategic, they're measurable and they're achievable, but we still need to work hard to reach them. Just going to flick through a couple of graphs now. Now bear with me, these graphs are important because you will see them come up in the plan, and I'll quickly show you how they work. On the furthest blue bar there, you'll see that's our baseline emissions. And then to the beginning of the plan, there were some additional emissions. And then the colours that follow that down, they're called waterfall graphs. As they roll down, we can look at the different ways that the different actions that we will take in order to get to our baseline, in order to get to our target. And the target's the final blue column to the right there. So in this case, we're talking about 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2028. We can look at the first orange one up there. We're looking at natural greening of the grid. So we know there are a lot more renewable energy technologies going into the grid, and we can see throughout that time we will have a considerable drop in emissions without us doing anything. The second one there at 8% is the street lights. Streetlights are huge. The council pays for the majority of streetlights. Streetlights are a huge cost to council and obviously therefore a huge carbon emitter. We were one of the first councils working with Ausgrid. A few years ago we started a program called the Streetlight Improvement Program. It sounds simple, changing a light bulb, but if you've ever changed tens of thousands working with Ausgrid, it was quite a feat to get to where we are today. That is, last year we started the Streetlight Improvement Program, and we have actually started swapping out from these older technologies across to the new LED technology, looking at around a 70% savings in greenhouse gases alone there. The next one coming along, the building there's another drop for building efficiencies over time. The next orange one along, we're looking again at rooftop solar, so a lot more rooftop solar, a lot more batteries, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. And then the big green one there, this is the new one for us. This has been fantastic. Again, we've been working at the forefront. We're one of the first councils to work on a power purchase agreement. It's a fascinating way in order to reach a renewable energy target, because it's stating that there's a point where you can't put any more solar on your roof, but you can build a solar farm. You just can't build a solar farm within the Willoughby area. So we got together, we aggregated our power demand with a group of councils, and we went out to market. We said, essentially, we're not just one council, we're putting out to market an aggregated amount of power. We got back through Origin, through our tender process, we got back 20% renewable energy within that contract. So they they built a solar farm on our behalf, and that is therefore part of our energy consumption. Moving along, the target there for the community was that by 2028 our community will emit 30% less greenhouse gas emissions by the same baseline target. And just quickly, it's a similar sort of graph here, but you're looking at, again, our baseline emissions there. We're looking at greening of the grid. In addition, you'll see the waste diverted from landfill, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. We're talking about rooftop solar there, building efficiencies, and that sort of depicts how we will be reaching that target. Moving on to energy use, setting up the targets for energy use. The community made it very clear at the time that they didn't want to just see greenhouse gas reduction targets, but they wanted to see clear renewable energy targets. So the targets here that came out of the consultation period was for council that we got to 20% renewable energy target by 2020 and 50% by 2028. And for the community, by 2023, we're looking at doubling these 100% increase in the solar PV capacity compared to the 17-18 year. Our progress to date, council solar PV systems have contributed 6% renewable energy supply to its demand, with a total 317 kilowatts of solar installed on its facilities. Our next job on the books is the concourse, which will add another 8 to 10% on top of that. As I was saying before, council has negotiated a power purchase agreement with Origin of 20%. So the good news is that we have reached the 20% target already, and we're continuing to move ahead. Our energy use, and I promise this is the last waterfall, but the depiction here is for community's pathway to 100% increase in solar. We can see there, Willoughby Council is actually has one of the lowest uptakes of solar PV. Well, this is a great opportunity for us because we're starting here. We believe there's a lot of opportunity working with the community, providing services to the community to reach that target. So we'll continue to deliver our Live Well in Willoughby program, which includes workshops on solar PV and batteries. We will link with residents and businesses with the state government programs such as the Energy Saver and the federal government's renewable power incentives. We'll support the community with free solar advice, which is provided by non-commercial experts that are contracted by council. A great example of this is the industrial sectors of Artarmon and our other areas. There's a huge scope. I think you can only imagine that the roof space on these buildings, there's huge scope for solar PV uptake. Considering we are now buying solar PV off the grid through our purchase power agreements at below the price we're paying for coal-fired power, we're now going out to the business community and saying, here's an opportunity. We realise this is not your business as usual. This is not what you do during the day. So we are offering to produce a full business case for you. And we're doing this for the business community, for schools, and also for residents. We're just trying to provide incentives to encourage the community targets to be met. Adapting to climate change. This is where we start getting into the last presentation. Council has been delivering climate change adaptation programs since 2010 when we started proactively planning on a risk-based mitigation. It was actually initiated by our insurers who were well ahead of the game on climate change, let me tell you that. The plan looks at using climate projections to manage flood risk, reducing and reusing water, accessing the latest science, research and best practice, and implementing the Resilient Sydney program, which I won't go into now because I think you've probably got enough information, but suffice to say that Willoughby is pushing ahead from top down. We're pushing for a Resilient Sydney program to be rolled out within the Willoughby LGA and with the Greater Sydney area. The next section is community education and capacity building, and you can see the what came out of the community consultation. It's really about, look, I'll summarise it. It's really about not how we just deliver education. It's how we deliver programs that support the community's ability to make the change. I know a lot of you here tonight, it will probably be very proactive, but there's a lot of people that need different types of approaches in order to coach them into this area. So we will continually improve education and engagement programs to the community that increase the uptake of more sustainable lifestyles of energy efficiency, active transport, bush regeneration. And you will see some of our banners around at the moment. The Live Well Willoughby program, that is our education banner, and there are some booklets here along with the plan, but again, I do encourage you to go onto the website to access that information. We do limited print runs. The next one, Council will ensure sustainable design is incorporated into all new council building proposals and retrofits, and this came out of the last speaker. One of the examples of this, the extension to the Willoughby Leisure Centre, the Gore Hill Stage 2, which is building a sporting facility. These types of buildings now integrate best practice into their planning. We use the Green Building Council of Australia, the Green Star program, to ensure we meet the targets. We will strengthen planning requirements for new developments through council planning procedures. And as discussed before, we'll consult with the New South Wales Government on increasing the Building Sustainability Index, quite often known as BASIX. Sustainable transport, and I'm aware there's quite a lot of these categories, so I'm moving quite quickly, but we will get to some questions. Sustainable transport, this is one of these fantastic opportunity areas. The community asked for a doubling of electric vehicle charge points, 10% increase in bike infrastructure, and a 10% increase in cyclists. That's a metric that we can measure how well we're doing with our infrastructure. How are we going to get there? Well, we have implemented almost a dozen electric vehicle. I think we're up to 11 electric vehicle charge points already. Our first street charge point went ahead in Anderson Street in Chatswood. And we have plenty in car parking facilities. We will continue to work with car share providers. We will continue to work with Transport for New South Wales to make sure that our public get the best public transport outcomes. Now, this is not just being talked about. The investment in share paths, the investment in these bike paths and pedestrian links is happening now. For the last 2 years, Council has been investing in the planning, and within the forecast over the next 4 years, Council is investing considerable amounts of money, and this is in the public domain, you can look it up, considerable amounts of money in the extension of these shared paths. These paths are all about linking key locations, your bus stops, your schools, your shops, and on a wider level, making sure that what we build links with our neighbouring councils. Water quality. The targets that came out of here was to ensure no reduction in quality and also continue our report health card. So again, we're transparent to the community on the state of our waterways. Council developed an operational document known as the Water Plan. This document details the necessary work out to 2023 to ensure we meet these goals. It includes investment in assets such as pollution traps and their long-term maintenance. We are increasing our focus on water pollution, collaborating with stakeholders such as Sydney Water, the EPA and the community to identify, remediate and prosecute. And this has been a very successful program over the last 2 years. I believe some of the polluters we're sending a very clear message to now. Water conservation. Council is obviously a big user of water. A lot of parks, a lot of ovals, a lot of reserves. By 2028, we're looking at 120,000 kilolitres per annum by Council. We're well above that at the moment. This is a strong target. And we're also going to provide the same support mechanisms we talked about before to ensure the community can meet the target set of 110 kilolitres per person per year. So how will we get there? Well, coming back to the water plan, which prioritises investment, including stormwater harvesting and rainwater tanks, continue to work with council facility managers to identify efficiencies, and continue, as I said, the education programs that are necessary. Bushland. Cornerstone of Willoughby, much loved by, I'm sure, many of you here tonight. By 2028, the targets set here are an increase in the number of suitable areas being managed as bushland, no deterioration of their condition, and an increase in the urban tree canopy. How are we going to get there? Well, we've got plenty of detailed planning documents, such as the Urban Bushland Plan of Management and Reserve Action Plans. All these documents have a lot of community input into their development and go into quite a lot of detail as to their actions. We will continue to undertake our bushfire hazard reduction, and we saw the need for that by the last speaker, and continue to ensure that it meets the ecological objectives, such as ecological burn plans. We will improve and extend bushcare volunteer sites and site planning and supervision. There are over 300 amazing bushcare volunteers throughout Willoughby, and the best we can do is provide the necessary training and support for those. Just an interesting aside, the increase in urban tree canopy, it's a very public conversation piece. We heard about it before around urban heat islands. It forms a very important component. We didn't have a metric in there because we didn't have the data. We're currently undertaking the street tree inventory, which is giving us the data necessary to make an informed decision on that. Within the next year and a half, we will have the data coming in from that inventory. It's pretty much just like looking at trees, street trees, like an asset, looking at the condition of them, but also looking at where the opportunities are to increase street trees. And the inventory has been going for about a year and has already identified thousands of locations, especially amongst industrial areas, where we can increase our street tree. Once we have that data, we will come out with a clear target for that one. Resource recovery and waste avoidance. This is another one in the media quite a lot, and I'm sure many of you have heard about terms such as the China ban over the last year and a half. The community at the time made a very strong and clear, provided a very strong, clear message around what they felt was important. The target for waste diversion, so this is very clearly, I guess that 70% waste diversion target by 21-22. There was access to the community recycling and drop-off centre for all residents, and there was a 5% reduction in illegal dumps removed by council. So that 70% diversion target includes recycling, green waste and waste processing. And this is really the responsibility of both council and the community. Council needs to ensure that infrastructure and contracts are in place to best process waste. However, the community need to be encouraged in reducing waste and minimising contamination in recycling. There's been a lot of media attention on recycling, and it's important for the community to know that materials are being recycled. I know the media throws a different story, but we are recycling at the moment. And it's very important that the community doesn't start thinking that that's not occurring, because it'll all start to unwind very quickly, all the work that's been done over the years. We don't want the community to reduce their efforts. Some recyclables are still going to Asia. That's by achieving lower contamination rates. And a lot of the quality plastics, paper, cardboard, are still being recycled within the country. But you know what? It has been a time of instability, and I think we need to capitalise on that. This is a great opportunity for us to start looking into our own backyard. So what we're doing at the moment, we're working with other councils and the state government, primarily the EPA, to look for those opportunities. And with council and with a lot of organisations, it's very important to understand that those opportunities lie with us as well as our responsibility. We have to look not only at recycling, but the full circle of this product. We have to look at the demand, creating a demand, and council has a responsibility there. So we have negotiated with Downer, who is a provider of asphalt, to start trial sites. There's a product called Reconophalt. This material has 40% waste materials in it. It might be crushed up old roads, toner cartridges, but also a lot of soft plastics. So many of you might recycle your soft plastics back into your shopping centres. This material, it's just oil. So they're using it as a high quality binding agent within roads and rolling this material out. We're also focusing on concrete at the moment. Concrete is the second most consumed product in the world after water. Concrete we've been starting to use on footpaths a product called green concrete, which has up to 40% fly ash. Fly ash is a byproduct of the coal-fired power industry. When we talk about community engagement, it's important to note that not everybody's on board with in areas such as recycling. So we have actually been doing a recycling bin inspections, and as part of a community engagement program. I know it sounds very glamorous. The bin inspections, we've done 1,500 bin inspections last year, or a year ago almost to date. Those bin inspections, we used an incentive sort of program, so you could even win movie tickets for doing the right thing. For those that weren't doing the right thing, we had a sort of a colourful campaign around how they could improve their processes. We noticed that there was a 14%, this resulted in 14% reduction in recycling contamination. And that 14% was really interesting. A couple of weeks ago, we did the second audit of these 1,500 bins, and that 14% was actually maintained. Now, that shows that the community education clearly came through with a message, and it's not often that we have such clear evidence that some of our education programs are working. The other one there you'll see is illegal dumping. We have a state funded illegal dumping officer. They've been making some great inroads. They've been working with a lot of the multi-unit dwellings and some of the larger apartment areas, and we've gone well beyond 5% with a lot of our illegal dumping. We've also got a surveillance trailer, I'm not sure if you've ever seen it around, which we leave at hotspot dumping sites, and that has actually ended up in quite a few prosecutions for illegal dumping. It's very well signed, the trailer. I'm not sure how they still dump when it's sitting there with a